Welcome to today's talk session. My name is Deidre Moss, and I'm the host of Can We Talk? I'm an educator, motivator, and a talk connoisseur. So today we will be talking about marital rape. This is definitely being a hotly debated topic. And so we will be talking about this topic today. But before we get started, I just want to mention that our prayers are with those who would have been impacted by Tropical Storm Hurricane Nicole. We are grateful for his passage, and we thank God for safety and protection from the storm. Now, as it pertains to marital rape has been a topic of discussion recently, and we decided to dedicate our session today to talk about marital rape and other related topics. So today we will collaborate with our friend, Alicia Wallace of Equality Bahamas, and I'm sure you're involved in other initiatives, so I guess you could elaborate further, but she's an activist and she will help us dissect this topic today. And at this time, I will pass the virtual mic to our guest so that she can introduce herself.
Hello, Deidre, and hello to all of the watchers and listeners, everyone tuning in and watching the recording. It is great to be here again. I know we always have great conversations. We always ask really good questions, Deidre, so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I am part of the team running Equality Bahamas. We're an all-volunteer team. We've been working since 2014 on lots of different issues, but they broadly fit under this category of gender-based violence. So we're working to end gender-based violence in the Bahamas in a number of ways. And one of our main areas of work is changing discriminatory law, getting rid of laws that discriminate against women, and that really create an environment where women are disproportionately harmed by a lot of different things. So that includes a law, that includes policy, that includes some of our behavior, because we know that our law has a lot to do with the way that we think and the way that our culture forms and also shifts over time. And marital rape has been an issue that's been on our radar for a while, a long time, but really, really ramped up in 2018 when we saw a bill that was brought that was an amendment bill to the Sexual Offenses Act. And since then, we've been working on it, and we launched the campaign, Strike 5 campaign, hashtag Strike the number 5 IB. And we relaunched that in recent months after launching it the first time for International Women's Day in 2020. I'm really focused on not only criminalizing marital rape, but doing it in a really specific and explicit way, making sure that we change that definition of rape that's in the Sexual Offenses Act. That is critical to getting this done in the right way.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I know that you are passionate about this topic, and I'm grateful to have you here today. So I want to thank you for that introduction. Can we talk marital rape?
Let's do it.
So before we begin, if you're tuning in from our social media page and you just joined us, like and share this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel using the links on our page. We need your support to continue these talks. Also, if there's something that you think we should be talking about, feel free to let us know. We want to hear from you. Let us know if you would like to advertise on our platform or sponsor our program. We want to grow. And so with that, let's get into our talk. And so I would ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're no stranger to this platform, but tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization, Equality Bahamas.
Well, I am an activist, an advocate for women's rights in particular, and more broadly, human rights. So that's my area of work. That's what I'm really passionate about, ensuring that people have their basic needs met, and that we also not just have our human rights in this very theoretical way, but that we actually have access to those rights. And a lot of that work is about educating people about rights, and kind of going at some of these myths, really busting myths and helping people to understand that rights are not just like a pie where we have to split up pieces, and the more you get, the less I can have of this pie. It doesn't work that way. We all have equal rights. They are all inherent to us. We don't have to earn them. We don't have to do anything to deserve them. They're just ours. And it's just a matter of making sure that the mechanisms are in place so that we can actually access those rights. So that's my work. And that is part of the reason that I started Equality Bahamas in 2014. So the organization really started as rapid response. It was a coalition in the beginning, and we were responding to a certain member of parliament who made a non-joke about domestic violence in the early part of 2014. It only came out in the news, I think, weeks later. But we responded to that, and over time transitioned the coalition into Equality Bahamas so that we could look at issues a bit broader than domestic violence. That is still a large part of our work, but we are now looking at gender-based violence in a broader way. So not just thinking about intimate partner violence and domestic violence, but looking at the ways that structural violence exists. So there are laws that are violent. There are policies that are violent. And of course, there are violent behaviors. So really expanding the definition of gender-based violence and expanding our understanding of it and addressing it in multiple ways. So there's lots of public education that's going on. We're really dedicated to community engagement. So we have a number of programs that we run. One of them is Women's Wednesdays, which is a monthly discussion series where we bring women together to talk about issues that are of personal, national, regional, and global interest. So we talk about things from personal finance to gender equality. What does gender equality mean? To the climate crisis, and what does it mean for women? And how is the climate crisis specifically impacting groups of people that are in situations of vulnerability? So that includes women, LGBTQI plus people, people with disabilities, children. What are the specific effects on these groups of people? And that leads me to the work that we're doing on feminist policy making. So ensuring that we're always centering the people who are at the highest risk, the people who have the most to lose. Because if we don't think about them when we start to make policies and make recommendations, they're going to be left out and they're going to be left behind. But when we center the people who are usually left on the outside and the people who have the greatest needs, then we make sure that we cover everyone. Because if we're covering them, then everyone is covered. And that is what is meant by feminist policy making. So always centering people who are in situations of vulnerability. And we do this, again, on different levels. So you might hear us on a talk show talking about a news story. For example, when there are missing girls, you often hear this sort of response where people are like, nobody got to go to look for her because she with man, she bad. And so we will respond to things like that and say, no, we're talking about a 15-year-old child. The child is not bad. The child is not even able to consent to anything. Who is bad, who is criminal, is the man that you say she's with. So let's go find that man. Let's figure out what's going to be done with that big, grown, rusty adult. So shifting the conversations that we're having and putting it into context, and also connecting that to, again, the laws and the policies that we have.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. These are definitely sensitive topics. It's kind of difficult conversations. You're kind of entering people's personal space, entering people's personal lives. So it's definitely difficult conversations to have. I definitely picked up on the last comment that you made when you spoke about coming in and addressing the issue with missing girls, and I think sometimes we become desensitized to it when we see these posters. There's usually people make their comments and they outright attack the young ladies without considering the fact that in most cases, they're usually missing with adults, grown adults.
And in some cases, they're fleeing abusive
Yes.
households. So we're making these assumptions about people and not knowing anything about their lives they're experiencing.
Definitely. But I mean, these are sensitive topics. When you're talking about entering someone's bedroom space, it's definitely difficult to talk about these things. But I think that we need to shed light on these issues if we are to make progress as a nation. If we are going to consider the rights of our girls, our young women, these are the conversations that we need to have. We can't run away from them. We have to shed light on them and we have to address them straight up as it is. So I want to thank you for being forthcoming and progressive in that way and being willing to put yourself out there, because I can't imagine the backlash maybe that sometimes you may face. But yeah.
People don't like it.
Yeah.
People don't like it when you start rocking the boat and you start getting at things that they feel are very personal to them, where they feel that they're being attacked, right?
Yes.
A lot of times when we talk about these issues, we're holding up a mirror to people, and that's very uncomfortable. But we have to have these uncomfortable conversations and help people to come to grips with what they're doing. And that's why it's so important to name things. You know, we talk about things and these sort of covert ways, and we have this coded language that we use. When you name something,
yes,
it changes the whole conversation. So somebody will say, well, yeah, I do that. Yeah, I haul at women on the street. Yeah, I say, hey, sexy. But when you call it harassment, they're like, I don't harass nobody. And it's like, no, but that's harassment, though. It's unwanted interaction. When you start talking about it that way and you put that label on it, you give it that name, there's this discomfort because it's a mirror. I've already said that I do it, and now you gave it this name, and I know that name to be bad. So now you're saying that I'm bad, and I got to come at you, you know, and make you the bad person. So that's what happens in a lot of these conversations.
Definitely. And like I mentioned, I can't imagine, you know, the response sometimes that you may have to take on in, you know, bringing these issues to light, in being an activist and trying to be progressive in addressing these issues. It must be challenging, and we're going to talk about that. But I want us to talk about definition of marital rape for those who may not be fully, you know, aware or may not fully understand its definition. What is the definition of marital rape, and why is it so important for us to address this issue?
It's really important to understand that rape is rape. All rape is rape. And we are using this terminology, marital rape, to make it clear that this is something that is left out and that it needs to be included in our law. It's not that it's a different circumstance or it's a different type of offense. It's rape. So any kind of rape is rape. Marital rape, we'll talk about that. We're talking about rape that's occurring within a marriage. So a person rapes or, you know, engages in some sort of sexual intercourse with a person that they are married to without that person's consent. That's marital rape.
I'm sorry, were you finishing something? Can I get to the next question? Okay, so I wanted to ask you about the legal definition of marital rape as it stands now. What would be defined as marital rape according to our laws?
So we have no marital rape in our law right now. If you look at the Sexual Offenses Act and you go to Section 3, you'll see that there's a definition of rape. And that definition is, you know, it says this type of interaction with somebody who was over the age of 14, because if you're under 14, then there's different terminology, there's different law there. So someone who is over the age of 14 has sexual intercourse with a person without their consent, but then at the end, it has this disclaimer, who is not his spouse. So those 5 words completely change it, because then it says, by law, it does not apply to people who are married. So that's where marital rape is excluded. We have this definition of rape that captures everyone, but then it has that who is not his spouse. So this only applies if you're doing this thing to someone who you're not married to. If you go a little further down to Section 15, there's a section there that covers rape in an instance where people are married, but they have already started the process for legal separation or a divorce. So that's the only instance where a person who rapes their spouse can face legal consequences in the situation that they have already been separated, they've already going through this divorce process.
So I want us to get to this video. I want us to highlight this video, and I just want to play it, and I just want to get your feedback. So as a disclaimer, I just want to mention that we do not own the rights to this video. However, this video is being played for the sole purpose of educational purpose. Okay, so I am going to pull up this video. Where's this video? Second.
Right.
Okay, there we are. Okay. Can you see my screen? Can you see the video?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. So to the government of the Bahama Islands, preach it. And all you pulpit dogs, amen, regardless of what religion you represent, that justify raping your wife, I challenge you, not just the Bahamas, the world. That's right.
Okay, so I'm going to stop this share. I hope it wasn't too low. But what are your thoughts on that video?
It was a little hard to understand what he was saying with the ha ha. So you have to translate.
Oh no, you did not just do that. You need me to translate? You good?
Mm-hmm.
He just was speaking out against the legislation that says you have a right to rape your wife. I guess he's against it. So he's preaching out against that. So this is a foreign entity. This is not within the Bahamas, but he says that, you know, it's I guess he's against it, and he's saying it's not right to rape your wife. So I don't know if you want to add your thoughts to that.
We're hearing this a lot from religious leaders, and particularly from the Christian church. These men.
But I just want to mention he's against it. He's not for it. He's against.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have these lots of Christian church leaders who are very strongly against criminalizing marital rape. Right? They think that they and all men have the right to access the bodies of their wives. Right? So we're just looking at bodies and not people. And it really gives this impression that when you get married as a woman, you lose your personhood. You lose your bodily autonomy.
That that's a big topic you go in. I just warning you before you go there. Okay.
You lose the right to say yes, to say no. You just become like a blow-up doll. That is what they're saying. Right? You just there to just do whatever. You're just supposed to take it. And when I say take it, I mean like just lay there and take it. And the men are allowed to take it in the other way that we talk about, right? And this takes me to that place where it's really important to talk about the way that we talk about sex in the first place. Because why are we going around the place talking about, yeah, I take that. Oh, I can take it. Yeah, I let him take it. Take it? We're talking about it like it's some commodity. Like it's the item on like a freebie table. Lollipops in a bowl. Take it if you want it. We're talking about people, real people, and we are more than our bodies. And it's really dangerous that religious leaders, people who so many people look to for guidance, for accurate information, for interpretation of religious texts, these people are giving this idea that when you become married, you are nothing. You are nothing. You have no right. And this person who you married has every right to you, to your body, and to make you feel any kind of way. And to say that that's God ordained. That's what some higher power wants to happen to you. I mean, how can you even believe in a higher power that wants you to suffer, that wants you to be less than a person? And how can you believe in a religious leader who interprets the text in that way when there are so many ways to interpret the text, especially if we look at it alongside other scriptures that talk about love and peace and loving your neighbor as you love yourself? If you love your neighbor as you love yourself, how much more should you love your spouse? And it's really unfortunate that we don't have more people, particularly in the religious community, particularly religious leaders, speaking out in support of criminalizing marital rape, supporting the personhood, the bodily autonomy, the human rights of women. There are a few, but they are far outnumbered by these hateful rapists and rapist apologists. Because there's no reason you would be in support of marital rape, that you would be against criminalizing this unless you yourself are a rapist or you support rapists. Because there's a distinct difference between sex and rape. And earlier I said you have to be careful to think about the ways that we talk about sex, right? This is why there's a difference. And people will conflate these things. So we'll say, no, we need to criminalize marital rape. And these people are like, but a man have a right to have sex with his wife. Well, guess what? It's not sex if she didn't consent. It's rape. These are different things that we're talking about. You don't get that yes. And if it's not an enthusiastic yes, without pressure, without coercion, without any threats, it is not sex. That's not sex that you're having there, buddy. You're a rapist now, if you take it.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to jump to the comments. It's a very, very interesting conversation to have. I'll get back to the comments, but I want to ask you, as it pertains to marital rape law being amended, what is your view for those who believe that marital rape should not be? I know you mentioned it a little bit, but if you just want to further elaborate just a little bit more on those who believe that the law should not be amended and it should be left as is.
They're supporters of rape. They're rapists and they support rapists. If that's the position that they take, because again, rape is not sex. They're completely missing that we are all people, that we all have the right to say yes, the right to say no. We can give consent and we can withhold consent. And I think that for a lot of people, there is this confusion about the law and the way the law works and the way we apply the law to our lives and use the law. So there are people who say, well, this is my belief. I am of this particular religion, and my particular religious text or the person that I look to interpret text tells me that this is my duty, that this is the thing that I need to do to be a good spouse or to get into heaven or whatever the case may be. I believe that this is the thing that I need to do. And I believe that I'm not able to say no. If that is where you are, I'm very, very sorry for you, but you don't have to use this law. You don't have to stop us from changing this law to help other people who do not think the same way as you or who do not feel the same way as you. So there are people who are suffering, who may or may not be of the same faith, the same religion, who don't want to have this experience and would like to have legal recourse. Why stop them from having that legal recourse? You don't ever have to use it. If you're fine with you feel like, this isn't rape, my spouse has the right to do this, I am fine with it, this is going to get me into heaven, you do not have to use the law. But your choice of religion, which you are free to have, does not curtail or should not stop someone else from having a right to their religion or to be free of religion and to access their full human rights. So, this is really about expanding human rights, ensuring that we have access to human rights. And if you don't want them, don't tap into them.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. So for those who are joining us, those who are watching, feel free to comment. We definitely want to hear from you. So drop your comments in, share, drop your comments. So I want to get to key demands, and I know within your organization, you've listed several key demands as it pertains to the marital rape amendment. And so I just want you to share a little bit, what are the key demands that you want to be considered?
First things first, we need to amend that definition of rape in section 3. So we need to remove those last 5 words in that first section, who is not his spouse. That's why the campaign is called Strike 5. That is critical. We need to get rid of those 5 words so that this definition of rape applies to everyone, regardless of relationship, and in particular, regardless of a marital relationship. The next thing that we need, and that follows from amending section 3, is the repeal of section 15. Once that definition of rape applies to everyone, we won't need section 15 anymore. Remember, section 15 is the one that says, if you are married, but you're going through a divorce or you're going through a separation, then you have this legal recourse. We don't need that anymore because it would already apply to everyone. So get rid of that. We also want to see a definition of consent in the law itself, in the Sexual Offenses Act. So that's a statutory definition of consent. Right now, the Sexual Offenses Act uses the same definition of consent that's in the penal code. And it's very general because it's meant to apply to all kinds of different laws. We need a specific definition of consent when it comes to sexual offenses. We need to have a really strong, clear understanding of what consent is and what consent isn't. And it's important to note that in the current draft of the amendment bill, the bill to amend the Sexual Offenses Act, we do see those 5 words being taken out. We do see the repeal of section 15 and it being replaced with something new. And we do see a definition of consent, and it's a pretty strong definition of consent. So we're happy to see that these demands have been, for the most part, met in the current draft. What is missing that we really need to see is a clause of non-immunity on the basis of marriage. So what that means is we want to see some text in this law, in the Sexual Offenses Act, that essentially says marriage is not an excuse. Marriage is not a defense. Because sure, we can change the definition of rape, but we might still see a case being brought to the courts and a lawyer saying, how could we say that this is rape when this man is married to this woman? When they got married, and you know the nonsense, right? The same garbage that the rapists and rapist apologists, religious leaders are running on with, the lawyers are going to run off with the same thing. So we want to have something very clear there that says, not an excuse, this is not a defense, you cannot use that. So we really need that clause of non-immunity on the basis of marriage.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those key points. And those are definitely very important points that you raise, especially as you speak to those 5 keywords that you want removed, those 5 keywords. And so I want us to talk about the impact. What do you think the impact would be if those key demands aren't considered?
If they aren't considered. If we don't change the definition of rape, then we're going to be playing this game. We're going to be playing the game that they tried to play in 2018. So that amendment bill did not, the proposal was not to change the definition of consent, the definition of rape in Section 3 of the Sexual Offenses Act. It was proposing to basically create a new crime, a new category of crime, and it was called something like aggravated spousal sexual assault. And there were some people, there were some groups that said, this is good. Like, we don't really care how we get it done. Let's just make sure that it's illegal to rape your wife. You can call it whatever you want. Our position at Equality Bahamas is absolutely not. Rape is rape, and we're going to call it rape. From you call it something else, you are giving into and you're supporting this idea that marriage is somehow exempt. Married people are exempt from the law, and that the crime is different when it's between people who know each other or people who have this existing intimate relationship, or they are sharing in this covenant, right? In the church, they call it marriage is covenant. You leave room for that. And law really does impact the way that we behave and the way that we think about what is right and what is wrong. So we all kind of have this understanding that, yeah, stealing is bad. Stealing is wrong. From a child, you know that it's bad. And what do your parents tell you when they catch you like stealing gum from the grocery store or stealing $1 from a Grammy bag? They say, you want to go to jail? You know, so from a young age, you get this understanding that, oh, bad things. If I do bad things, I go to jail. Stealing is a bad thing. They're going to call the police and I'm going to go to jail. So if we have this idea now that rape is horrible, we understand that rape is terrible, and when you do that, you go to jail. And then we have a separate law now. The same thing as rape, but these people are married and we call it something different. It affects the way that we think about it and the way that we think about the people who are involved. So a rapist is different if he's doing it to the person that he says he loves and who he vowed to protect and obey and all that stuff, right? So the same person can rape a stranger on the street and is charged with rape. That person could rape their cousin and they're charged with rape, probably incest. But the wife, it gets called something else because rape is just too heavy. The word is too heavy. If the word is heavy, what do you think about the act? What do you think about the experience? What do you think that survivor is carrying with them? Words matter, words mean things. So it's really, really important that we understand that this act has one name. And I talked earlier about the importance of naming things. People understand the gravity of what they're doing, the gravity of the thing that they're talking about, right? That's why we shouldn't be talking about take it. And we use very violent language in a lot of cases. But really, when we talk about sex, it is very violent. The words that are used to describe it, the phrases that are used to describe it. So we have to be really careful about this, about the words that we use, the way that we talk about things, and the way that we define things and the way that we put them in the law. Because as I just gave some examples of how it impacts the way that we think and the way that we model ourselves in our lives, the way that we even teach our children. And the law really should not be where we get our morals or where we like measure morality, because there's so many things wrong with it and we learn so much over time. But it is something that people use as a measuring stick. You know, you might do something to someone and they get mad at you and you say, well, is it against the law? Is it a crime? You know, so it's like, it's not a crime, it's not against the law. Even if you are hurt, I should be able to do it. There should be no consequence. That tells us everything we need to know about the law and how it shapes and molds society.
Absolutely, very important points that you mentioned. It's important to name, name it, give it a name.
Yeah, call it what it is.
Definitely. And so we look at challenges. What are some of the major challenges, if there are any, that your organization has encountered in response to addressing the issue of marital rape?
Well, we see a number of issues with it that are barriers to moving forward and getting this done. One of them, of course, is the very loud voices of the people who are against it. You know, it's very, very interesting that rapists and people who support rapists feel very comfortable to be loud about their positions. They're not embarrassed. They're not ashamed. They're not really worried about anyone looking at them funny. You know, they're quite proud to say, look here, when I want what I want, I just take it. My wife just got to deal with it. That's a part of marriage, and they are confident in that. I mean, that is scary. That is terrifying. You know, and they're not really getting a backlash. People who get in the backlash are the people who are pushing for this to be criminalized, pushing for the protection of women, for there to be legal recourse, for there to be some access to justice, for people who go through this and survive it and want to be able to do something about it and try to stop it from happening again to them or to somebody else. Another barrier, of course, is the public discourse and it being very skewed, largely because we are so dependent on particular groups of people, particular leaders, to shape conversations and tell us how to think. We are not generally very good at being independent thinkers. We like to think that we are, but a lot of our ideas, a lot of our beliefs come from someone else. And this is from a long time ago. You know, this is from childhood. You have certain beliefs. You have a particular way that you make tuna salad because your mommy or your Grammy or your uncle or whoever told you this how you make it. Some people might even have a certain order, like how you could put in the lime before you put in the mayo. This tuna can taste stink, right? So you committed to that. It don't matter that all these ingredients, the same ingredients getting all mixed up, but they have to go in a certain order because that's the way that somebody taught you how to do it when you were 10. And now you 50 arguing with somebody because they like tomato and their tuna, and you feel like tomato ain't supposed to. So it's not just about these so-called controversial issues, but certain things are ingrained in us because we learn them from a young age. And as we get older, we start to see who our parents look to for advice and for guidance. And we are taught to look to particular people for advice and guidance. So that's people who are in positions of authority. When you're a student, that's teachers. When you're in the workplace, that's managers and supervisors and employers. Even if you don't agree, you're going to do the thing that they tell you to do. So that's an issue that we have. We don't have enough people who have the trust, the confidence, the following, who are speaking up about this issue. Like I said earlier, there are people who are on the side of justice, on the side of rights, but they're silent. They're quietly in support. But you can't be quiet in support right now. Where we are right now, the place that we're in, this is a dangerous place. I don't know that we're going to be able to move forward unless we come out strong and loud and say this is what our position is. We're not moving on it. These people are wrong, especially when you're looking at a group that has a lot of power, a lot of influence. So again, I'm going to go to the religious community. Depending very heavily on the Christian church, because so many Bahamians are Christian, whether they're practicing or not, and they look to particular leaders to tell them what to do, right? People hear from the pulpit how to vote in general elections. So judge this issue of marital rape. So if you are a religious leader and you know that rape is wrong, that rape is rape, and that we need to criminalize marital rape, it is not sufficient for you to believe that by yourself. It's not sufficient for you to just talk about it quietly with your colleagues. Because the people who believe the dangerous thing, the thing that is putting lives at risk, are loud about it. We don't have the luxury of being quiet. We don't have the luxury of being neutral. You have to speak up. If you have a following, you have an audience, you have influence, and that's any kind of influence. You might have influence at your family lunch on Christmas Day. Shake the table on Christmas Day. Talk about marital rape. Deidre, talk about it. When you have all your auntie and your uncle them in the room, talk about it. Let's see who gets uncomfortable. Yeah. Why not? Why not? I mean, I think you would be concerned about having that conversation on Christmas Day if you know you related to some rapists. And that might tell you if you are concerned about having this conversation on Christmas Day because certain people are going to get riled up, those are the people you need to deal with. Take care of your own, get your cousins first.
Well, that definitely will be a Christmas dinner to remember.
Memorable. You won't need any pictures, no videos. Everyone's going to know what happened that day.
Definitely. I want to thank Torian for his comments. Thank you for joining us. As you would have mentioned, for the most part, those who are, we have some loud persons in the room. We have some loud persons in the room, but we want to be in a space where we can, have progressive conversations. We want to hear from all sides involved. But at the end of the day, we need to have an understanding really from the perspective of those who are greatly impacted, the ones who are really going to be impacted from this decision. And sometimes in these cases, we typically hear from those who are not really impacted as a result of these decisions, but we need to hear from the community who's going to be impacted. So did I interrupt you? I don't want to take away from what you were saying. Okay. So it's very important. I don't know about the Christmas dinner. I don't know about that, but we definitely need to have open dialogue about these discussions, especially when we know that there are things going on and we have a culture where we tend to sweep things under the rug. We don't like to talk about uncomfortable topics. We don't want to talk about sex. We don't want to talk about certain things, but these are the conversations that we need to have because evidently people are out here having sex. We see young girls running away from, as you would have mentioned, sometimes abusive situations. These are the conversations that we need to have and have all stakeholders on board, not just adding our commentary from what we think is going on, but really actually having factful, conversations based in fact. And so I want us to continue on and come to our fast talk segment. I want us to come, I don't know, we had a little freeze there. But I want us to come, we're coming now to the end. And I just want to thank you again. You are such a jet setter. I'm not going to say where you are, but I just love the fact that you're doing it for me and you, because I'm sometimes I get scared on the plane ride. I don't know, but I'm just super proud of you. And so I'm glad that you are traveling the world doing the work that you do. So we've come to our fast talk segment. You're going to be given 60 seconds to answer each of these questions. And the first one is, what important key points should people be aware of as it pertains to the discussion around marital rape? What do you think is the key point that people need to know?
When we think about the discussion on this issue, I think we need to remember that the loudest voices are not necessarily the right voices. They're not necessarily speaking the truth or giving accurate information. Just because they're out there, because they're being centered in stories, doesn't mean they're right. Usually the people who get centered in the stories are just there because they're sensational and the media knows they're going to sell some papers with a ridiculous quote. So just remember that. And keep in mind that we're talking about this issue because women are people, because women are human rights, are human beings and who have human rights. And the fact that we have to keep saying that over and over again, it doesn't bode well for us. It's not a very good reflection of us as people and the way that we view each other and that we view ourselves. Women are human beings. That means that we have human rights, just like men do, and we deserve to have access to those human rights. So if you read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, if you look at the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which we call CEDAW, the Women's Bill of Rights, you will see certain things laid out, and you will see that the Bahamas has ratified them, which means that our government agrees that women deserve, that the women must have access to human rights. This is an obligation that the Bahamas has, and it has made this commitment to us, the Bahamian people, not to the United Nations, these other bodies. It's made the commitment to us, but through them on the international stage, and it must act.
Thank you so much. And you mentioned an important point, and I have to agree with you. And I saw a statement somewhere that someone made, and I hope I can attribute this to the right person, but it was a quote, and it mentioned that you can tell a lot about a society by the way that they treat their women and girls. And it's so very important that we're mindful of how we treat our women and our girls. So we move to our second question. For those who are interested, how can they include themselves in this discussion?
You can get involved right now by going to tiny.cc/strike5. So that's tiny.cc/strike, the number 5, IVE. Once you go there, you'll have access to the explanation of our campaign to criminalize marital rape. You'll see all the do's, things that we want to see in the bill, the don'ts, what we definitely do not want to see in the bill. A couple of those things we saw in 2018, things like temporal limitations, which means that a woman only has so long to be able to report a case of rape if the perpetrator is her husband. So we don't want to see anything like that. We want rape to be treated the same way across the board. And you'll also see graphics that we hope that you will save and share on all of your social media channels and use the hashtag strike5, strike the number 5 IVE. Write letters to the editor in the newspaper. Call into radio talk shows. You know, a lot of times people who call into the radio talk shows, they're calling in to talk nonsense. They're calling in to disagree with
Oh no,
things.
you did not
So-
just say that.
So when you hear us talking sense, when you hear us there defending rights, call in to say, yes, I agree. Women are people. Women deserve to have this. This is something that we need to do. We should have done this a long time ago. Don't let the rapists and the rapist apologists take up all the space. You need to take up space too, with your good sense.
And so we come to question 3. What is your view of those who believe that there is no such thing as marital rape? There is no marital rape. There's none. There's no rape in marriage.
And I tell you, they're rapists and rapist apologists. They don't care about people. They do not understand human rights. That's pretty much all there is to it.
Why should the issue of marital rape be a priority for everyone?
It's really important to understand that these issues affect us all in some way, not necessarily in all the same ways. So there are people who are married right now who are being raped in their marriage and feel like they have no recourse because they don't. Legally, they don't. People will say, oh, well, get a divorce. Okay, that's a divorce, being able to separate, but that doesn't mean that you're able to get justice. A divorce is not justice. That's a separation. That's the end of a relationship. People also deserve justice. And in addition to that, it's not that easy to leave. A lot of women are financially dependent on spouses. We know that in the Bahamas, it's very hard to live off of one income. Hardly anyone lives alone. Pretty much everyone, married or not, got to have roommates, got to have other people to split the bills with. So it's very difficult. Children in a household where someone is being raped by their spouse. Can you imagine how volatile it is, how tense it is, and what it's like to grow up in a household like that? You have people who are probably missing work because they have tears. You know, maybe they are being raped. They're not consenting to sex because they know that the person is cheating and they don't want to be exposed to various different STIs. So then we have an increase in STIs. You have people missing work. So, you know, there's a loss of income. There's a loss of productivity in the business sphere. It affects everyone. It all just trickle down. It does not just affect the victim, but even if it was just the victim, we should still care just as much as if it was affecting us.
What can we do to educate ourselves? How can we educate ourselves as it pertains to the topic and the debate around marital rape in the Bahamas?
Read, do some research, listen to people who are talking about it. And, you know, like I said, there are a lot of people who are talking a lot of nonsense, but it's important to listen to what they're saying too. It's really important to understand the opposition, to hear what they're saying, their talking points, and hear how they're justifying their foolishness. You've got to know to be able to respond to it. It's also important to look at what other countries are doing. And no, we're not, look, we just can copy everything that everybody else, no. We're going to learn from other people's experiences, from the experiences of other countries that have gone through this before, that have failed, that have succeeded, that are still trying to see what is working, to see why they made the change. How did they get the shift in the general, the public conversation? How did they build the political will? What kind of politicians were stepping up and saying, this is our position and we're going to get this done? How did it happen in other countries? What did it look like? What is the legacy, the colonial legacy, right? From being colonized, being enslaved people. All of this is a legacy of that. Who has overcome that? We can look at other countries in the British Commonwealth and see how they have changed their laws. We're one of the last to deal with this.
Thank you. Thank you for going through our Fast Talk segment with us. And so I want to ask you if there's any additional comments you would like to ask before we end our session today.
Yes, I definitely encourage people to check out the Strike 5 campaign. Go to that link that I mentioned earlier, tiny.cc/strike5IB. You can follow Equality Bahamas on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're at Equality242. Tune into our upcoming events. We're talking about a lot of these issues. Every year we we participate in the Global 16 Days campaign. So this is the 16 days to end gender-based violence. And we usually have 10 to 12 events running over that 16-day period. So it's a really busy period. You can pop into the events that are of interest to you. They include things like free yoga, sessions with therapists, and discussions about really critical issues like this one. And also, we know the other hot button issue is on nationality and the rights of women to pass on citizenship to their children and their spouses. That's going to be a big
conversation. That's a hot one. That's a hot ticket.
Definitely. On Saturday, November 26th at 10 a.m. EST, we will be joined by Arona Narain. She is a member of the CDAW committee. She's also the vice chair and rapporteur of the CDAW committee. And she will be walking us through Article 9 of CDAW. Again, that's the Women's Bill of Rights that is specific to nationality and says that everyone has a right to nationality. Men and women should have the equal right to pass on their nationality. The Bahamas, again, has ratified CDAW.
Oh, you're hitting some deep topics. You're hitting
29 years since we ratified, and we are still not in compliance. So join the session to hear about the article, what it really means, how the committee interprets it, and what it expects to see from the Bahamas when it next goes before the committee, which ain't long now. It's not going to be a long time before we're up there, and we have to watch our government defend itself and say what it's done and what it hasn't done and why it hasn't done things that it should have done. So you can register for that now. That's at tiny.cc/CEDAW, CEDAW, the number 9.
Well, we have a long way to go. I want to thank those who have been tuning in. I want to thank Helen Crown. Helen Crown is all the way from the UK. I don't know what time it is on your side of the world. I don't know if you're 6 hours ahead or 7 hours ahead. I don't know. But I want to thank you for joining us, Ms. Crown. Thank you for popping in. Also want to thank Mr. Nemar also as well. Thank you for joining us as well. And Mr. Seymour, thank you for joining us in our session today. I want to thank Ms. Wallace for her sharing insight. A lot of us, we try to understand this topic. We see it popping up. We hear these sound bites, trying to figure out, what's going on. So for you to come and break it down for us, this is very important. And so that's why it's important for us to have these type of conversations. It's always great to be entertained. Yeah, I like a little laugh. I love to be entertained. But we really need to get down to the nitty-gritty and really get to the conversations that are going to help us progress as a nation. How old are we now?
We're going for 50.
We're going on 50? Really 50? That's it? I thought it was 55. 1973. Don't laugh at me. How old are we? 1973. Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, but we're getting there, and we need to see progress as a nation. These laws, sometimes they seem archaic. We got to move forward. And we have to look out for our most vulnerable communities. And so I want to thank you for joining us here today, sharing your time with us. You look so refreshed, girl. You need to tell me the secret. Share the secret, girl. Okay, so I don't know if you want to add anything else. You want to share your page?
I also wanted to mention that we have been working with Marian Bethel, who is a Bahamian attorney, and she is on the CDAW committee as well. And she did an excellent session with us in March of this year. You can find that on our YouTube channel. If you just look up Equality Bahamas, you'll see all of our videos. It's from March. And she really walked us through this issue of marital rape. She went back and looked at the colonial legacy. So when we got these really archaic laws, the way that the UK has already moved on from the garbage laws that they left us with, they've already changed theirs. Many other Commonwealth countries have changed theirs. Countries in the Caribbean have already changed their laws. And she goes through that to show us how it's been done. So Guyana is an example where they have criminalized marital rape, and they have a great definition of consent, and they have that clause of non-immunity on the basis of marriage. Canada also has made that change. A lot of people don't realize that Canada is a Commonwealth country. So they have a really solid definition of consent as well. And she walks through some of that. It's a really, really informative session. So take some time to watch that as well.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. She definitely has a wealth of knowledge to pull from. I want to thank you for sharing that. I would like to thank our guest, Alicia Wallace of Equality Bahamas. She's an activist, and she shared her insight with us today. We want to remind you that if you want to advertise with us, let us know. You can reach out through our page. Our contacts are there. We want to grow, so grow with us. Grow with us. So to those watching on social media, thank you for listening in. Like our page for future notifications of upcoming talks. Comment under our videos. Let us know your thoughts. We want to know, we want to know your thoughts. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Can We Talk? Follow us on Instagram and Twitter using the addresses provided on our page. And remember, let's think, talk, do. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.